Hello, everybody, and welcome into HCAM Sports Talk Live. I am your host, Tom Nappy, and joining us on the show today, we have Bob Hamilton and Mike Terosian, and we have Hopkinton High School Athletic Director Rich Cormier. Guys, how are you?
Oh, great.
Hi, Tom.
Good. How are you guys?
Good. So we just got done with a successful winter season, Rich. I'm glad we were able to get through it okay. The team's got some games in. Just tell us overall, how did everything go? Obviously, there was a few postponements along the way, but the teams must have been happy to be out there and get some games in.
Yeah, I mean, you said it well, Tom. I'm just really glad that we were able to finish. Obviously, a lot of schools were not able to have winter sports at all. Or they had their seasons cut short for various reasons. So, we did make it to the end. There was definitely some bumps along the way. We had a period of time of about 3 weeks where some of our teams did not have a game. But I can't tell you how impressed I am with our student athletes. I mean, that's a hard time. 3 weeks without a game, that's a lot of practice. And our coaching staff keeping the students motivated, and just the students themselves keeping themselves prepared and ready to play. And then down the stretch, because of those postponements and makeups, we had stretches of 4 or 5 games over a 6 or 7 day span, in hockey and basketball in particular. So, we were able to get there. Almost all of our teams got to 10 games, which is what we were hoping to accomplish. We did have one team that was only able to get to 9. Which was unfortunate. But again, there was definitely a lot of situations that we had to get through this winter, but we did. And I think ultimately the kids who participated had a great experience. Certainly one they won't forget. And now we quickly turn the page right into the next season.
And I do want to mention we have Kevin Stone on with us as well from the Metro West Daily News. He might jump in with a question or two. Mm-hmm. But we do have the Fall 2 season coming up next, and we're going to have some March and April football and some girls volleyball, also some unified basketball and swimming. Mm-hmm. How did everything go planning-wise for the upcoming Fall 2 season? And I understand the teams are in practice right now. How's everything going?
Knock on wood, things are going really, really well through these first few days. The fact that we're now in our 3rd COVID season, for lack of a better way of explaining it, I think we're getting pretty adept at managing the different modifications that are thrown at us by the state EEA, as well as the MIAA and the different modifications. And one of the nice things is that as we've moved through the year, there's certainly some challenges that we still have in the mask wearing and the distancing and some of the rules that we have to abide by. But one of the nice things has been that the rules of the games have largely started to become more traditional. Whereas in the fall, you take soccer and field hockey, for example, those sports were drastically altered in terms of the rules of their games. We saw some alterations in basketball and hockey, but really, for the most part, the games were still the games. And then now, football, volleyball, again, during the games or the matches, they're pretty much being played as they should be. The biggest challenge for swimming and diving, which is another one of our Fall 2 sports, is that those meets are being held virtually. So that is a significant change, not having an opponent sort of in the lane right next to you that you're kind of competing against. So that's a significant change for sure. But most of our sports are starting to be played a little bit more like they should be, at least in terms of the rules. Again, the mask wearing and some of the bench areas and things like that are certainly still very, very different.
So not a whole lot of differences in football at all?
No, in terms of the rules of the game, it's some really minor stuff in terms of like huddles, for instance. You all have to be facing the same direction, instead of kind of coming together in a circle, really sort of limited type things. I think the biggest change for football, honestly, is that we can't use locker rooms, and just given the equipment that's involved in playing football. But in terms of when they're out there on the field playing, the game is going to be the game of football. And same with volleyball. Again, there's some small rules, and this is true in football. We got to sanitize the balls and the equipment and stuff like that. But again, when a volleyball match is going on, unlike in the fall, There were some significant rule changes in the fall for those schools that played volleyball in the fall. You actually had to change the ball out every point.
Wow.
You also had a 3-foot sort of buffer at the net that you sort of couldn't cross when you were going up for a hit.
Right. It essentially took spiking out.
Exactly. Which is obviously a key part of the game. So those rules have been eliminated. So again, now you're going to see a more traditional game of volleyball. Again, they're not going to switch sides. I mean, they're limited. There are small changes where they typically change sides every set. That's not going to happen. Again, so there are changes, but I would say nothing, overly significant like we had in the fall. I mean, soccer and field hockey were different sports.
One of my favorite changes about the volleyball not changing every set was they used to pick up their whole bench and moved. It wasn't just like in hockey or football or basketball where they just changed sides playing. Volleyball used to pick up all their equipment and move it to the other bench and back because there was plenty of time for that. And so that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to. But you're also going to see with the 3-foot rule for the net, you shouldn't see any net violations anymore, which was a major call, which used to, could impact a game.
Well, that 3-foot rule is gone. So that's can go up to the net now. So
right.
That's back.
I was going to say the girls volleyball team, I think, is going to be a lot happier playing this season rather than the fall with all those rule changes.
And that was, honestly, that was our hope. When as a league, we moved volleyball, and most leagues did. Now, again, some did play volleyball in the fall, but the overwhelming majority of the state moved it. And a lot of it had to do with our gym wasn't even accessible at the start of the year. There was so much stuff in our gym. It would have been a real challenge to have volleyball. And I know we're not alone in that. But the other hope was really that we'd get to play the game more traditionally and as it was meant to be played. And I think that has proven to be the case.
That was great. So what's the situation with Hillers football? I know you've talked about perhaps using the turf field, and I know locker rooms aren't allowed. And the other question, will there be time differences in football without any locker room use, such as a shorter halftime or anything like that?
So you are correct. We are using the turf field right now. Our grass fields are covered in snow. We were able to get our turf field cleared. Our maintenance crew was awesome. We brought in a company. Again, our turf is still under warranty. So that's something that varies from school to school. You might've seen some pictures on social media where the kids get out there with shovels and that's great if your turf is no longer under warranty. If we did that, that would void our warranty. So we needed to bring in a company. They came in twice. They came in last week to clear, the couple inches that we still had out there. And then actually it was close to a foot. And then they came in Monday morning to clear what we got this past Friday. So we have been out on the turf. That's where we're offering 4 levels of football right now. So all of our teams are practicing out there. So we're going till about 8:00 at night with our teams. And then the hope certainly is as we move into April and we have our last couple of home games, if we can play out in David Hughes Stadium, which is our typical field, it would be awesome. I'm sure the guys would really like to play on their traditional field. But time will tell, and the weather will determine whether or not that's going to be possible or not. So for right now, we're planning to practice and play all of our football games on the turf. Halftime is still going to exist. Unlike in basketball, where it did sort of get eliminated, and in hockey, we went from periods to halves. Football halftime is largely still remaining, but the teams will have to basically just go to either end zone.
So like they used to do in Papuana.
Pretty much.
Don't have the room. Yeah.
Pretty much. The tough part, and it'll be tough to maneuver for sure, is that unfortunately they're still going to have to remain distanced. So when you're talking about 45 players, which is the maximum roster that we can have, and about 6 coaches, which again is the maximum amount we're allowed under MIA rules. So you have up to 51 people at 6 feet apart. It's a lot of space. So that's not going to be easy to do. Obviously, the nature of sports and half times is to come together. So that's certainly going to be a logistical challenge.
I'd imagine, especially for the coaches trying to draw up plays at halftime.
Yeah, I mean, those are where I think the challenges really are, is the sideline. Again, everyone has to be 6 feet apart. By rule, we actually have to have a cone or some sort of marking to designate. We did that in the spring as well, because we were required to do that in the spring. So you might, need a substitute, and that player might be 35 yards away from you as you're trying to get his attention to, to sub into the game. So, I mean, there's certainly going to be some challenges, but I have to say our coaches are already on top of it. We've already had conversations. They're going to sort of use an assistant coach who's going to be they're going to have to go get whoever we need to bring to the forefront. And I think most of once you start playing in football, a lot of times you have a certain rotations. You kind of know who's sort of coming in and who's the next person. And we had to deal with this in hockey.
Sure.
We can only have one line change in the bench. So they had to kind of constantly rotate through who was in the bench, who was going to be the next line to jump onto the ice and so forth. So coaches are great. I mean, they're willing to do whatever it takes to get their kids an opportunity to play. So as much as we do need to figure some things out, I'm honestly not worried about it. We'll figure it out. We'll make sure that we comply with the rules, but also make sure that we're obviously giving the kids a chance to compete.
And
So
will they have cheerleaders and fans, or will it just be?
So
like it
we're
was?
offering. It'll vary by school. Some schools are allowing cheer this season. Some are not. There's a lot of restrictions with cheer as it currently constituted. So I actually met with two of our returning cheerleaders, two of our seniors, and we talked about it. And we're going to offer cheer in the spring and give them a chance at a competition season. So again, some schools are doing it now. We're choosing to do it in the spring. Part of the problem with cheerleaders, and I don't mean this to sound negative, is, as I mentioned before, you're trying to space out 51 people per team at 6 feet apart. And now you add in cheerleaders. It's really difficult to find the spacing to have all of these people there. So that's certainly going to be sort of school by school. They're supposed to be on the end zones as well. If you do have cheer this year, they would not be on the sidelines. They'd be on the end zone. And there's a lot of restrictions on what they're allowed to even do during the game and during practices. If they practice indoors, they're not allowed to yell. So there's, and again, so for all of those reasons is really why we made the decision to move cheer to spring. I know it would be a little bit weird to, a big part of cheer is cheering at football games, but we're hoping that we can give them their competition season, which is what many cheerleaders really prefer. Not that they don't enjoy the football games, but they really want to do their competitions.
Yeah, Rich, I'm glad you brought that part up, because cheerleading is not just part of the game where they cheer in between plays. I mean, they're a competitive sport. They are a sport on its own, and they are just basically, that's their night in front of a big crowd. But generally, they practice and work hard towards competitions. And the Friday night games, they do the push-ups on the touchdowns, and they do the
Right.
cheers in between and whatever. But they are a competitive sport.
Right, and that's, I mean, with cheer, a lot of the football stuff is sort of traditional. It's not really what they do some practicing, for what they're going to do at games, but the bulk of their practices is their competition routine and their choreography and getting ready for those competitions, as Mike said. So again, we could have probably made it work this season so they could cheer at a couple games, but then they don't get to have their competition season. So it's, it's like everything else this year. It's kind of like weighing your pros and cons and trying to make the best of the situation. And that's why I met with like I said, the two cheer seniors to kind of get their sense as well. And everyone was in agreement that the spring made the most sense. Similar to volleyball, Tom, you mentioned this before, we moved volleyball in the hopes that it would be a better situation, and it is a better situation. And we're kind of hoping the same thing happens by moving cheer to the spring. Time will tell. Because the other option potentially is that even if indoor competitions are still not permitted, we could potentially have outdoor competitions because the weather would be a little bit nicer and allow something like that. And then, Bob, I think you mentioned fans as well.
Yep. Yeah.
So similar to what you've seen kind of each season, I think school by school will determine what they're able to, logistically accommodate. So I think you'll see most towns try to have some semblance of fans. Some might not, just because either because their numbers are high in their community, or because similar to basketball, where some gyms couldn't host fans for basketball, they're probably not going to be able to host fans for volleyball either, because they're going to need to use their stands as their bench area. So I think you'll still see some of those limitations from a facility standpoint. We're still planning to do spectators as we have in the previous season. So we'll have the same setup for volleyball and unified basketball that we did this winter for our basketball teams. Football is going to be more challenging. We are still allowing 2 spectators per home player. So again, the TVL is not allowing visiting fans. But again, thanks to you guys and many other local cable stations, these games are being streamed so that people can see the away games. The challenge for us on the turf field when it comes to football is that you have teams on both sidelines. So whereas in the fall, when we had soccer and field hockey games, we were able to have fans across the field from them, spaced out, but we were able to have them right basically up close and into the, on the sideline. For football, that's not going to be possible. So again, we're still sort of working out the logistics, but most likely they're going to have to sort of be up on Hughes Stadium, because again, if they stand on the fence, they won't be able to see because the players will be blocking them. So they're probably going to have to kind of go up on sort of the track area up there so that they're able to see down onto the football field. As you guys probably know, we don't have stands, in the turf field. We have, a couple stands by the softball field and in the baseball field, but those would not be useful for watching a football game. So that is something that we will struggle with. Again, we're going to allow people to come and watch, but they really won't be able to come in the fence. And that has nothing to do with, we don't want them in the fence. There's just nowhere for them to go.
Right.
So we're going to work through some of those logistics. And that's another reason why it would be great if we can play in Hughes Stadium, because then we can bring fans in and have them, we can put X's, where you've seen many people do this. They'll put X's down on the seats, and that's kind of where they need to sit. So again, hopefully we're able to do that towards the end of the football season. But if we do play any games inside, which I'm anticipating we will, fans would just have to kind of be outside.
So if the cheerleaders can't yell, I'm assuming the pep band can't play.
Yeah, we won't. Again, we have no place for the band to go.
No place.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course the other people I'm thinking of, because everything will be down on the turf field, and you're going to have your visitors up above, probably in like the fence line and the visitors' bleachers of Hughes Stadium looking down.
So the visitors' bleachers, which would be a great vantage point for fans, will most likely be off limits because, again, we don't have a press box. So right. For those of you people that are familiar with football, assistant coaches and you guys go up into the press box. That is probably what we're going to use as our press box, so that we've looked. That should give about the same vantage point as the press box does. Yes. So that's probably where the assistant coaches with the headsets will be. And so as a result, again, not that it's not an anti-fan thing. We right. can't have fans up there, just like we don't have fans go to the top of the press box and stand next to the assistant coach.
Absolutely, right.
So we'll probably have to put the visiting bleachers, we'll probably have to rope those off as kind of our press box as well.
And of course, and we love, and everybody loves the Hopkins boosters. Probably not going to be worth them to try to open any kind of concessions.
Yeah, no, we wouldn't be doing concession stands either. Just given the situation, the risk is not worth it. So no, we won't be doing any concessions. I just want to make that clear, because everyone, loves that hot dog. Everyone loves that hot chocolate during a football game. That's most enjoyable. And like during basketball, you didn't have the classes selling their pizza and candies and so forth, because first off, you didn't have that type of crowd. Right. You were in charge of admission, and they didn't have access to that part of the school. And so just want people to know that you won't have concessions. The boosters won't be around. I'm sure they'll be around still supporting you. But absolutely. The boosters are great.
They're going to have to look at new methods.
Yeah, I mean, it's been tough for the boosters, obviously, this year. It's not really a year to to try to raise money. To be perfectly honest, a lot of families are struggling financially, so it's hard to be asking them, for additional money. And the typical fundraisers that we do, a lot of it has to do with the banquets, like end of the year banquets. Sometimes they do raffle baskets. We're not having banquets. We can't really have large events that they would typically have. The school store is still functioning, but it's using an online model. So again, it hasn't been probably as lucrative as it's been in the past, but the boosters are always great. And I'm sure they'll be back to kind of normal God, I hope we're all back to normal next year. But, so again, and to your point, Mike, actually concessions are not allowed indoors. That was actually some of the rules and modifications that we had to follow. And again, we only had 24 people in there. You know what I mean? It's not really worth selling concessions, but it actually wasn't allowed anyway.
Correct. And that's why I want to make that point, just so everyone watching would understand that don't expect the doghouse to be open. Right. And here's the other thing. Normally, when we're used to having the fans at Hughes Stadium for football games, restrooms. How are you working out the restrooms for the fans?
We have the nicest porta potties you can imagine.
So the middle school won't be open again next to Brown.
No. So what we'll do for games is we will open those bathrooms behind the Doyle gym. And then we also do have porta potties for people that don't want to walk. Yep. Again, some of it will come down to, it looks like the snow is going to start to melt here. The weather's beautiful today. But again, it might be easier for people to go into porta potties that are right there versus going all the way up to Doyle, depending on the weather conditions.
They're clean daily, folks.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rich,
they're very nice. They're very roomy. They're not the tight ones.
Yeah.
Rich,
Kevin, go ahead.
Two quick ones for you.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, are you going to have room for us?
Yeah. So as we've done, across the board, we want to make sure that our student athletes are getting the coverage, that they deserve. And so we've been able to make it work by having local media come in. And honestly, HCAM, Hopkinton Independent, Metro West, everyone's been great. One of the things that's been awesome this year is everyone reaches out and says, hey, we're going to come. Is that all right? Do you have any protocols? Everyone has been so great communicating. So we'll be able to make that work as we have, throughout the other seasons. And you guys have done an amazing job covering, not only Hopkinton, but obviously all the surrounding communities and the teams, and finding really cool stories to highlight. Certainly this has been a year of cool stories, to be honest, right? There's been so many different things that have come up that have been great to see highlighted in the local news. And
do you know if you're going to be going either Friday nights or Saturday days, or any idea yet?
Yeah. So again, that's a local decision. So we're planning to play our home games for football on Friday nights. I will say our first home game is actually a Saturday, and that's because our first home Friday game is scheduled to be Good Friday. And so as a school policy, we don't typically play games. So we are playing that Saturday instead, but that's only because of the Good Friday holiday. But then our other two home games will be Friday nights. But I know one of our away games is a Saturday and one is a Friday. So I think some of the schools early on, those first couple of weeks in March, were thinking of playing Saturdays simply because they thought it would be a little warmer than trying to play, on a Friday night in March. As we know from our typical spring seasons, it can be quite cold out there, even for like a 3:45 game. So if you're playing a 7:00 football game, it's going to be pretty cold. So I know some schools were moving it to Saturday. We were kind of fortunate that our home games are on the second half of our schedule, just the way the schedule worked out. So our home games are all in April, which again is why I think we might have a chance of actually playing in Hughes Stadium. There's no chance of playing in Hughes Stadium on March 19th, but maybe April 16th, right? So that's a big shift, and hopefully we can get out there.
Yeah, I could tell you from experience, some of those late March, early April baseball games, they are cold. Yeah. So hopefully the weather will participate.
Well, because we know even with the first fall schedule that we start off announcing a game in T-shirts. At the end of the games, we're in parkas and snow caps because the temperature just changes in a matter of hours. And you always know, too, when you park your car at the middle school and you walk down to Hughes Stadium, the temperature changes 20 degrees and the wind increases at least 10, 15 miles more an hour. It's
right.
definitely different.
Sorry, Mike. I was distracted by your little graphics thing going on there.
Oh yeah, what's going? Oh, I know what's wrong with that.
That's better.
So I've been hearing. I do want to talk a little bit about the spring season because I've heard some rumors. So I want to see what you know so far. Is it going to be a full spring season? And I heard that it could possibly go into late June, early July. Are those rumors true?
Yeah,
Well,
they are.
let's hear that.
So, I mean, so the spring season's delayed, as everybody knows. So the first day of the spring season will be the 26th, which, there's different feelings of that because obviously the spring season was totally eliminated last year, right? So there's some mixed feelings about the delayed start to the spring. But I think most people also look at it as a positive because those first few weeks of the spring season are largely conducted indoors, using the gym, using classrooms, because we can't get on our baseball, softball fields, things like that. So it may be in some ways a positive that we're not starting until after April break. On the flip side of that, though, to make sure that we have a full season, the season will be extended. So where the typical end for the regular season is around Memorial Day, give or take the sport, right? Sports have different cutoff dates, but usually Memorial Day is roughly the end of the regular season. And then we move into the state tournament in early June. And then the state championships are held in mid-June. Now what you're going to see is that our season will go till mid-June. And then just today, I don't know if anyone saw this. So just today, the MIAA's Tournament Management Committee had a meeting to discuss the spring tournament. And there was a motion put forward to have a full state tournament, which would mean sectionals, states, the whole thing, all the way to a state champion. That was voted down. However, they did vote to move forward with a sectional tournament for the spring season, which I think is great. I mean, obviously, it'd be great to have a full tournament. But I think even a sectional is a step in the right direction. Certainly the spring season, I think everyone has a little, each season this year has been tough, but at the end of the day, we've had it, right? They've had a chance to play. So I think everyone feels a certain level of, we got to do whatever we can for the spring, right? They lost their entire season. Now this year is getting delayed. So I'm glad that they're making efforts at the state level to allow for some semblance of a state tournament. Obviously, they just voted that today. So there's really no parameters. We have no specifics. And technically, it still needs to go through the COVID task force and the board of directors. But it's definitely a step towards having a sectional tournament. So it's not set in stone, but it's a positive step moving forward. I can't speak for other leagues, but in the TVL, we're working on a draft right now of our schedule and trying to make it work, because the other thing now, by running the season later, we're running into a lot of conflicts with graduation and different senior events, and schools are trying to get really creative with their senior events. And so most of them are being held outdoors on athletic fields, which is great. Like I'm not complaining about that. I think anything that we can do to give these seniors some sort of senior events is worth it. But that also means we can't play games that day. So we're really trying to figure out the schedule. But our plan in the TVL is to play a full spring schedule. So what I mean by that is the sports that typically play the large twice and crossover once, that's what we're doing. A sport like track that only plays the large and does, 1 meet a week, we're doing that. So you will see a more, it's going to be condensed. So we're going to be playing a lot of 3-game weeks instead of 2-game weeks.
That'll keep us busy.
To get the schedule in. But we're planning to play a full TVL schedule in the spring, which will take us to mid-June. And then we would have, for the varsity teams, this sectional tournament, whatever that, turns out to be.
So, Rich, I want to take this chance right now because nobody ever really talks about it. And we see it in, knowing you and being involved in the sports for a long time. Normally, your staff for these games is consisted of teachers coming in, keeping crowd control, keeping the students under control, or just helping out where things are needed and so forth. But nobody realized how that has been cut down because of COVID and what is involved in involved in staffing each and every home game. Now, I want you to take a chance to explain what that staffing is now, and of course, to give a shout out to your staff who has made this all happen. Please.
Yeah. So one of the things I would say, Mike, and you hit the nail on the head is, some people, we have a lot of people that have worked for us for years in different capacities, whether it be ticket takers, event staff, managing all the different aspects of games. But with far reduced crowds, we don't necessarily need to do that. We're not selling tickets and so forth. The biggest challenge that we've had this year is dealing with the spectator limitations and making sure we're greeting the team. They can't go in the locker room. Everyone needs to be changed. So there's a lot of those pieces. To give you an example, in basketball, our building is locked, right? So we had to let in every official, every team, freshman, JV, and varsity. We had to let in our 30-second operator, our scoreboard operator, our scorebook keeper. All of the spectators had to be let in at a certain time. So there was just a lot of those logistical pieces that were hard for me to certainly do all by myself. So the person that's helped the most this year has been Corey Mills. Who's part of our staff here at the high school. And then he also coaches wrestling for us. He's actually coaching middle school football for us this fall 2 season. So he's been a huge help. And we've had some other people that have stepped in as well. We had a great table crew this year. As everyone knows, we had so many different changes and postponements. And Coach Bliss, who obviously is a legend, he was at most of our games doing the 30-second clock. And then we had, Mr. Connor helping us out, who's been working our table for years. And we had a teacher, Caitlin Burke, do most of our book. We've had to use 2 athletic trainers to cover all the different events, and they've worked incredibly hard this year, obviously, to make sure that we're navigating all the medical situations the way we're supposed to. So there's been a lot of pieces to this. Teams aren't traveling together on buses. We typically have 2 teams together on a bus. We can't do that this year, right? Yeah. So we have one team go, they come home. Next team goes, they come home. So, the coaching staff, our event staff, people have been amazing. You guys have been amazing. Yeah. Just trying to make this work with the constant changes, the constant postponements. Yeah. And one of the things that I don't think people realize is, for myself, for instance, as an athletic director, I'm around when we have practices, when we have games, but I'm not necessarily in the gym at every freshman game, at every JV game, because there's so much happening. Because of COVID, we really need to have, it's actually in the rules that you need to have a COVID person at every event. Right. So we also had to make a schedule so that there was really not 2 things going on at once, because we needed to have an athletic trainer there. We needed to have either myself or somebody else there. So that's been a challenge to make sure that you guys know, on a typical day, we have all sorts of stuff going on all at the same time. And to be honest, that's my biggest concern about the spring. So I'm really hoping they reduce some of these restrictions for the spring season. To be honest, I don't know how we're going to manage it, because as you guys know, we have baseball going on, softball going on, lacrosse going on, track going on. We have 4 levels of baseball. We have 3 levels of softball.
I've seen 4 events.
We're going to have wrestling. We're going to have wrestling. We're going to have cheer. Yeah. We're going to have a million things going on.
I can't wait.
The spring. It's not going to be possible for me to be everywhere all the time. Yeah. So we'll have to see how that goes. I think certainly we have an advantage in the spring where most of those sports are outdoors. The weather should be nicer. So I think we have some things certainly going in our favor. Numbers are going down statewide. Schools right now are obviously trying to get students back in full time. So I think, or I hope, maybe is a better way of saying it. I hope by the spring, again, we're not going to be normal. Yeah. I think, students are still going to be wearing masks during practices and games. I don't think that's going anywhere this spring, but I do think we'll be slightly more normal in terms of how we operate our spring season.
Well, I also want you to mention that one last staff member that you left out, who sits right in front of you on the other side of the wall. Can't forget her.
Lou is amazing. She obviously doesn't, she never wants any recognition. We put it out there on social media.
She's probably going to hate that I'm making you mention her name right now.
No, not at all. Honestly, Lou is like the other side of my brain. She's helping me remember all the different little things that go into it. I won't bore everyone with the details, but the amount of nitty gritty stuff that goes on behind the scenes. You mentioned bathrooms, just making sure that we have bathrooms, accessible. There's so many little things, and Lou is just amazing. For those viewers that don't know already, we've certainly tried to publicize it as best we could. But Lou, she was selected by Masada, which is the State Athletic Directors Association. So she was selected as the outstanding athletic administrator for the entire state. That just speaks to obviously her devotion, really. I mean, she's so committed. She's emailing me, texting me after hours all the time. She goes so above and beyond to make sure that everything is right. She steps in a moment's notice. She's amazing. She really is. So we're super fortunate to have her. She helped out a little bit of games as well, but she kind of prefers being behind the scenes a lot of the time. We also had days where it was kind of a Sanborn family event where Mark was maybe doing one thing for us. Mitch, Lou's husband, was doing the 30-second clock for us. He helped out a lot at our middle school basketball games. So sometimes we joke that it was a sort of a Sanborn family event staff evening. And again, they're just great that, they live in town. Lou's kids all came through Hopkinton as well. So a lot of pride in the community and making sure that we're doing things the right way. So I mean, we're very fortunate here, and the administrative staff that we have here has been super, super supportive of everything that we're trying to do as well. I know in a lot of communities, it's not easy to get sports passed. Our administrative team from the high school to the district level has been very supportive of what we're trying to do and provide these opportunities in athletics.
Well, Rich, Hopkinton is certainly lucky to have you as well. You've done a tremendous job working through all the stuff that you've had to work through since you've been here. I mean, when you first got here, I remember there was the Triple E situation, then you get a pandemic. So you've done a great job yourself.
I appreciate it.
And I do want to mention on HCAM for the Fall 2 season, we will have all the home games, including freshman and JV football. And we'll also have the freshman JV volleyball games as well. And, of course, the varsity and unified basketball. So we'll pretty much have everything going on sports-wise in Hopkinton on HCAM. So we're certainly happy to cover some spring football and other sports. But anybody have anything else for Rich before we let him go? Okay. Rich, thanks so much for joining us today. We'll certainly have you on again as it gets closer to the spring season. We'll check in with you and get some updates about that. But great job by you and all the staff. And we look forward to Fall 2.
Thank you. And again, I feel like I've said this a few times, but it really, I can't say it enough to thank you guys. I mean, where we are limiting our spectators due to the COVID guidelines, it's been amazing. I've heard so many positive compliments, not only from our own community, but from other communities on the job you guys do covering our games. And it's not easy. We've had a lot of games. You guys have changed on a moment's notice. We've had multiple games at different sites, and you found ways to cover it. Beginning in the fall, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and then through the winter, sometimes 5 nights a week. You guys have been amazing. So I really appreciate this partnership and what you guys have provided so that our community can watch their kids play. As a parent myself, I love watching my kids play. So you guys have been so pivotal in providing that opportunity for grandparents, aunts, uncles, you name it. So thank you guys very much. And I look forward to continuing this as we finish out this very unusual year.
Absolutely. Well, we're looking forward to it. And hopefully, as you said, will be more normal, especially in the spring season. But we're glad that the kids get an opportunity to get out there and play. And we're certainly happy to cover these games so everybody gets an opportunity to watch.
So thank you guys. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Take care, Rich. That was Hopkinton High School Athletic Director Rich Cormier. And guys, I mean, all the athletic directors really in the area, the TVL and plenty of other leagues as well. They've all done a tremendous job trying to work through this, and pretty much all the schools I know about in the area for the most part have played games and have had some good competition and allowed the kids to get out there. I can't imagine what a task it is to be an athletic director right now.
No, it's funny you said that too, because we felt bad for him when that whole Triple E came down in the spring there, the fall, with causing the football games going to Saturdays and whatever. And it's like, and then, all right, yeah, things are better now. We're indoors for the winter. Okay, how can things get any worse? Bam, COVID.
And I think we really owe him a debt of gratitude for being so flexible, because it took years and years of training to learn to be an athletic director. And then he comes here and it completely changes. It has nothing to do with what he learned. Now he has to learn it all over again, something new.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he was great at. He was great at. You're right, Bob. He was great adapting, and his open line of communication with us to be able to broadcast as many games as we can. And and one sport you left out too was swimming and diving. We're gonna
That's right.
covered. We got
We'll have that too.
That's gonna be I think Tuesday night, six Tuesdays or Mondays.
I think it's Monday.
6 Mondays in a row. Yeah, 6 Mondays in a row. We'll be doing swimming and diving. We're hoping to get announcers. I'm in touch with the swim coach right now. So, but either way, you'll be able to watch swimming and diving. We will be there.
Yeah, and it'll be a little different, but they're still competing, which is all that matters. They'll still be the same competition. They'll just be doing it away from the teams that they're actually competing against. Kevin, how have you been? How was your experience during the winter season?
I'll tell you what's amazing to me is the fact that we're now a year out from this thing when we first started, and everything that you guys have covered, everything we've covered. It's mind blowing to think that it's a year later and we're still doing stuff, but doing it very, very differently. The winter wasn't as weird as I thought it was going to be. I think you guys kind of feel the same way. The games are all normal, at least to me. They went by a little bit quicker, which I'll never complain about. And other than that, I mean, it's felt somewhat normal, which I guess is a surprise compared to, the fall season. But I feel like this year or this fall too, and the spring might be the most normal we've been since last year. Or at least it feels like it's heading that way, at least to me.
Yeah, I think so.
I agree with you. And one of the major comments that the many hockey games that I went to cover with Tom, it was a lot of fun that we noticed how much we enjoyed the halves instead of the 3 periods.
Yeah, I wish I could keep that. But
yeah, I mean, I thought that was great. And yet you can see, is there a difference by, having that extra 7.5 minutes of time in that first half where you don't have the ice worked on, how did that change the game? How did the time in between change the game? Because you would have 2 breaks instead of now we just have the one. You used to have 2. So as far as coaching the kids and the way the benches were so spread out, you had half the team on the bench with 2 coaches instead of the whole team and 4 coaches. So the other team was was spread way out. And it's like, how do you say, hey, Billy, did you see that? I want you to cover him when Billy is 20 yards away and they don't see him. So everyone has adapted. And as far as watching the sport and you watch the games, it seemed like everything's normal except they're wearing masks.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. I can tell you one, and I preferred the halves more so than not, but the one negative, announcing 22.5 minutes straight in hockey is not easy.
It's long. It is long, especially if someone's getting killed.
And I did realize, I think there was difference in the ice too. I mean, the ice was more beat up after a half.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. And I don't think that one repair is as good as the repair that's done in between periods.
Right.
I think that 7.5 minutes made a big difference on that ice.
I will say too, I'm not sure if you guys picked up on this as well, but really any coach that I talked to this year, there was never a negative, word said about a team. A team could have been 1-6 and it was, hey, we're just happy to be here. We're happy the kids are out here. And obviously, you like to see winners and losers and have that competition. But I think this year, more than any, coaches have kind of backed off a little bit, and it really is about the sport.
Yeah, and you don't have the playoffs, you don't have those tournaments, but it's all about just getting out there and playing. And the way I see it is every team that it's obviously you don't have the crowd, but it's almost like a playoff atmosphere at these games because kids are out there playing hard. And typically at the beginning of a season, you see them kind of breaking into it still, and maybe they're not at their best, but I feel like more so this year, they broke into it faster than ever before, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, the one question that I wish I could ask Rich when he was here was talking about, will there be some kind of Hopkins and Ashland game that could give you the feel of a Thanksgiving Day game?
Well, there's been rumors about Easter football, so
Yeah.
that, I know exactly. That's why I wanted his answers, because of the rumors of the Easter football. And again, how do you get the fans in there to give it the feel? I mean, because everyone knows when you go to a Thanksgiving Day game, it's about the homecoming. It's about people coming home for the holidays, seeing people that you haven't seen. It's like in every other year because the towns change hosting, but you miss that feeling. Because when I go to the games, I go because I want to see the game played, but I also want to see the people that I haven't seen for a year, a couple of years, 5 years, whatever, that happen to be home for the holiday. So I don't know if you're going to have that same kind of feel. The thing that I'd love is to have, again, when things get back to normal, is have a Thanksgiving Day game actually mean something, and like,
right.
Since they changed that whole playoff thing. So
they're working on that. So
Don't get me started.
Yeah, I know. I'm not trying to bring up the whole thing. Everyone knows how the games don't feel the same anymore. When you had, like last year, when you had Ashley go to the state championship, and it was just a ho hum game. I remember it. Even if nobody was involved in the championships, the games at least used to mean something before the playoffs. So
that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, and to both of those points, though, I think that's kind of towards Tom's point, where even the rivalry games now, whether it's soccer or, baseball and lacrosse in the spring, those rivalry games are going to mean so much more because you didn't have, those moments of Thanksgiving and stuff like that this year. And one of the other things, too, is you look at wrestling, and wrestling has a chance to be one of those sneaky, really awesome sports this year, especially outdoors. You can have some really
that will be cool.
Some really cool rivalry matches, maybe under the lights somewhere or something like that. So for people that did miss that, the whole rivalry thing during football season or during hockey, you might still get that in the spring too.
All right, and I made an executive decision. We're going to skip the highlights today and hold it down for the next 12 minutes. So next week will be a all winter highlight show. We'll show all the highlights from throughout the winter season. It was a terrific season. We had basketball, hockey, and it was a lot of fun. So we have some great highlights. And
downhill skiing for the first time.
That's right. We had skiing. There'll be some skiing in there as well. And the skiing broadcast looks so cool, by the way. John really did a great job on those.
Yeah, that was awesome. What a crew, and being able to assemble a crew and actually understand the sport, because having that kind of talent out there that knew what it was about to explain it for our audience made a huge difference, and it made a great difference for the parents, because there was no parents allowed, whether visiting or away, were allowed at this ski meet. So it was good that that got to happen.
Absolutely. So Kevin, is every school going to be doing outdoor wrestling, or is any of them doing indoor?
So as far as I know, it's everybody. Again, I'm not, don't quote me on that, but I know so Christmas Eve, Wayland always used to have a match against Weston, and Weston folded. So that became Lincoln Sudbury, and they didn't have that match this year. And I did a story on it, and the Wayland coach was telling me, "Hey, look, we want to try and get Lincoln Sudbury versus Wayland under the lights on a Friday night." And if you think about that, that's a really cool way for a lot of towns to kind of bring back that atmosphere, even if it's just for 1 or 2 nights. So I think people are going to forget about wrestling, and I think it's a way, again, for those rivalries to really kind of stand out this year without some of the other sports.
Well, I guess the good thing is wrestling is still separate from football, because there's a lot of football guys that like to participate in wrestling.
Yeah.
I guess the one flaw is it's not separate from baseball. So I know there's some baseball guys that typically participate in wrestling and vice versa. So that could make some things interesting, but obviously you'll just have to pick the sport you like more, I guess. But it's going to be really interesting to see it outside. What do you think they're going to do? Put some mats down on tennis courts, or should they bring in like a WWE kind of ring?
No, so I think there's certain mats, and again, I'm not a wrestling, savant by any means, but I think there's certain mats that they can roll out on the turf field and just throw it under the lights and have one of those cool matches for kids to remember for a lifetime. So again, I'm not sure the logistics behind it or anything like that, but that seems like a really cool way to again push rivalries that people may have missed out on.
But Kevin, don't you think it'll be a little chilly out there in the middle of at night to be wrestling on mats?
Oh, they're wrestlers, Bob. They can talk.
Yeah.
Well, if they do it,
if they're going to wear a parka, they can have a.
If they do it in the spring, and you're looking at April through June, then maybe not. Obviously, if it's March or April, well then they're screwed. But and then again, wrestling kids are a different breed, so they might not even feel it.
Well, I think the good thing is the spring season got delayed a little bit, so I don't think they're going to have as much cold as they typically do. Yeah. Obviously, the big fear that we've talked about before was this fall 2 season having snow issues. And as of right now, there's no snow in the forecast. That could change at any moment, of course. We are in New England, but
45 degrees outside right now. This is great.
Yeah, but I'm sure you all have had May snowstorms where we've had 6 inches of snow overnight in the middle of May.
Bob just jinxed it.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you that my youngest daughter, who's about 40 now, was born on May 5th, and we had 8 inches of snow the night she was born. So I know that can happen.
If anyone can predict the summer snowstorm, it's the guy who can predict the tie in the NFL.
No, I didn't pick the Pats in the final game. I have to apologize for Kevin for that.
They weren't in the, Bob, they weren't in the final game.
Bob, you're the big winner of the season because you picked that tie.
Yeah,
that's all we know. It doesn't matter that me and Tom won the pool with winning the with Tampa Bay, but it all matters because you picked the tie.
Yeah, thanks.
I'll
pick up my trophy tomorrow.
Oh boy. Well, we got fall 2 season coming up. Of course, as we mentioned, you can catch all the home games on HCAM. We'll have the spring season, which is going to be absolutely loaded. I'm going to love covering all the games, but kind of dreading how busy it's going to be, but we'll get through it.
Right. So right now we'll have 6 weeks in a row, Monday nights of swimming and diving. That's going to be coming live from the Milford High School pool. Tuesdays and Thursdays are going to be volleyball nights, and it will have both your JV1, JV2, and your varsity teams. The varsity games will be announced with Tom Nappy and Steve Sweetapple. We'll have Friday and Saturdays are going to be football right now. And the unified, we have 2.
There's some JV and freshman games on Mondays. But
Monday. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, we have Monday the afternoon. Yes.
We'll
Monday
have the schedule posted.
Yeah. So I was going to next say, watch for the schedule on hcam.tv under the or hcam.tv/live. You'll see everything that all our live broadcasts there.
But these games will all be broadcast on HCAM Ed or YouTube channel.
Yep.
Depending on what's happening on it.
They'll all be on HCAM Ed and YouTube as long as there's no nothing else that is airing, like a school committee meeting or something like that. Some of them might just be on YouTube, but one way or the other, they'll all be live.
No matter what, they'll be live on YouTube, and we'll get them out on Ed as long as there's no meetings.
Yeah, and because of that, they'll all be recorded by HCAM and available for playback at any time. And there are still the possibility of picking up CDs from HCAM for any of the games that we've broadcast and have on file.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Because all the playlists, if you go to hcam.tv/Hilla Sports, all the playlists for all the seasons are there right now.
Absolutely. So we're excited to do it. Kevin, one of the things that we talked about with Rich was the cool stories that happened this year. And there were a lot of them. And I know you guys had a bunch of them over at the Metro West Daily News and your New England Football Journal gig as well. What are some of the coolest stories that you got to work on this past year?
To be honest, and I'm not just pumping your tires. The one I did about all the various local TV stations, and as someone who grew up in the Waltham High School TV station and took the classes and covered games, to be able to give you guys the recognition and really the other cable TV stations around the recognition, that meant a lot to me. But it's crazy to see again just how much people are now watching local TV, and obviously for good reason. So that's probably my favorite. I'd say the one on the Hopkinton goalie. Her name is escaping me right now. I just covered
McCluskey.
her.
McCluskey.
Yes, thank you. She was phenomenal. I did something on her. They all run together at this point, but
Right.
look, it's always nice, especially now when parents can't necessarily get out and see games. Anything that we can tell, it's always nice to be out, at a game, and whether it's getting a goal on video, and I know parents love that, and whatever it may be, we just love being out there, and I know I'm sure you guys feel the same way. Just being out at games, no matter what the story is, that's honestly all that matters right now.
Well, because basically HCAM's whole mission statement is connected community, and that's where our passions lie. We love being the person that brings you the talented kids that we can show the whole town, and beyond. Thank goodness for places like YouTube that we get to show this. And one thing, because of COVID, that I'm very happy for, one of the things that we've done, we've got HCAM has great relationships with Halston Cable Access, Ashland Cable Access. We've now grown that, Medway, Norwood, and so forth, that we've helped each other broadcast games. So when Hopkins teams are away, we get their feeds and we get it to our parents. So it's easier for everyone to see. And the fans, and I'm talking fans that aren't in the school system, all the adults that love watching high school sports, they can find the games easier. So it's nice that all the cable access stations working together to make it happen.
Well, that's what it's all about. Just allowing people to see these games one way or the other. And it will be limited crowds during the fall 2 season. I keep wanting to call it the winter 2 season, but it's the fall 2 season.
Yeah, fall 2, yeah. Because we haven't
the random season.
We haven't found out, like in fall 1, where Holliston didn't allow fans even at away games. So when Holliston came to Hopkins fans weren't allowed.
Right.
So we don't know if that's going to continue. As things light it up, we're back into yellow, thank goodness. So we're hoping everybody else that's getting back in the yellow.
Yeah.
I'd like to, Tom, before you go, I'd like to point out that it's true. This is a Sports Talk Live show, and we're talking about the athletics. But don't forget, the high school has a lot of other things going on that HCAM may be filming, like the science fair this afternoon.
Right.
Tonight at 7:30.
That's right. 7:30 tonight.
Yep,
HCAM at YouTube. Check it out. We're out of time. But science fair tonight, 7:30. Oh, it's on HCAM TV. All right.
Both,
there you
both
go.
of them.
Both of them.
Yep.
Can't miss it then. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Big thanks to Rich Cormier, the athletic director, for Kevin Stone, Bob Hamilton, Mike DeRozier. I'm Tom Happy. We'll catch you next time on HCAM Sports Talk Live.